Hello again, it's Miss Sorenson. This time we're going to do something a little bit more difficult. We are going to create a normal distribution curve that will model your data. Now, obviously, if you look at my histogram, it's definitely not perfectly normal, and I doubt that yours will be either. But to do our math, we definitely need a normal distribution curve, or else our results will be messed up. So this is our end goal right here. You can see that our mean is in the middle here. This would be a 1 standard deviation away, 2 standard deviations, and there's actually a 3rd standard deviation, but it's a little bit too small for me to put a line there. Okay, so let's get down to it. The first thing that you'll need to do is a little bit tedious, and that is you need to take your data and you need to put it in Excel, not like you did for a histogram, but if, for example, you had 22 people that had a 0.4 second reaction time, you need to have that 22 times. Okay, so you can see here that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 people with a 0.25 second reaction time. So take a look at my data. Okay, you can see that a ton of people have 0.35, etc. Okay, so pause this video and go ahead and do that with your data right now. All right, next thing that we're going to do is we are going to talk about standard deviation. Now, if you look at this chart, it's essentially going from -3 standard deviations away to -2 to -1 to 0 to 1 to 2 and to 3. So I want you to create a standard deviation column right here. Okay? Then we're going to start by typing in -3. Okay, we're starting at -3 back here. And then I'd like to add 0.1 to every single value. Okay, so if you look here, I've done an equal sign. I've clicked on the value above it and then press +1, and I've copied that down. Let me do that for you right now. I'm just going to redo this whole thing so you can see how I got all the way to 3. So let me get rid of this, delete. I'm going to delete entire column. All right, that's not what I wanted. Control C. All right, so let me just clear contents. Clear contents. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press equals. I'm going to click on the one above it and then do +0.1. I'll do that one more time. Equals the one above it +0.1. Okay, now the computer should have the pattern. So I'm going to click on the 2 that I have the pattern written for, and I'm just going to scroll down, and I want to get all the way to 3 because my graph is showing all the way to 3 standard deviations. So I've gone too far, no big deal. I can just bring that back up. Okay? All right, so if you look here, this looks really funky. That's a fancy scientific notation way of saying 0. So go ahead and just type 0 there, press enter, and now your life is good. All right, next thing we're going to do here is we're going to talk about how do we get a number that is 3 standard deviations to the left of the mean. And let's think about it. If we are 0 standard deviations away from the mean, well, we should be at the mean itself. So what we need to do in order to calculate this column is to calculate our mean and standard deviation of our set. You may have already done that, and that's fine. You can go ahead and put those values in. I'd like to double check, make sure that your value you got on your calculator is the same as what Excel gets as well. So if you look here, I've calculated my standard deviation and my mean. So let me show you how I did that. Okay, for standard deviation, you click on equals, and then I start to type ST, and I said, oh, most recently used is standard deviation for a sample. Okay, this is a sample that you took. I click on it, and you can see the parentheses showed up, and it wants us to put in all the numbers. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select all of them. Okay, here I am. I've selected all of them, and then I'm going to press enter. Okay, so my standard deviation is 0.138. And just think about, does that make sense? That there's a standard deviation of 0.14 seconds roughly. That does make sense. Okay, next thing we're going to do is do the mean, which the computer uses average. So again, equals, and then AV, and then I'm going to click on my average. Again, we've got those parentheses where we have to put the numbers. So I'm just going to click on that. See if I can do this a little bit faster. I guess not. Still a little slow. Okay, I've selected everything. I press enter, and voila, I've got a mean of 0.4319. All right, after we've done that, now we can deal with increments. Okay, this you have to think about a little bit. If you are 3 standard deviations to the left of the mean, and our mean is 0.43 seconds, we should be less than that. In fact, we should be significantly less. How much? Well, 3 times the standard deviation away. We're going to subtract that because we are to the left of the mean. So here's what this looks like. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to delete it so you understand what that looks like. We are going to have the mean, so equals, and now we're going to put in our mean. This is our mean, minus 3 standard deviations away from the mean. So 3 times our standard deviation. Okay, go ahead and click on that. And, what doesn't hurt is the fact that we're dealing with these 2 numbers that will never change. So if you put a dollar sign in front, may not make sense right now, but basically we're saying, hey, we don't want to reference anything else besides these 2 values. So I'm going to put dollar signs there. Okay, and let's see what that gets us. Okay, there we are. So we're talking about being 3 standard deviations left of the mean, and this is the mean right here. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of conceptual understanding, but it's not too bad. Okay, if you think about this next number, well, we should be adding a little bit of the standard deviation to get closer and closer to that mean. So we're going to reference the cell before it, and we're going to add standard deviation divided by 10. Well, why would we do that? Well, to get from minus 3 standard deviations to minus 2, we would just be adding 1 standard deviation. But if I want to add a 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, I need to take that standard deviation and divide by 10. So I'm adding it to the previous term. Okay, so I'm going to reference the cell before and add the standard deviation, which I don't want to change, divided by 10. Okay, so let me erase the rest of these so you understand what's going on. And I'm not going to make that same mistake as before. I'm going to clear the contents. All right. Equals. I am referencing the previous cell, plus I'm going to add some standard deviation. Well, I'm going to add the standard deviation divided by 10 because I'm going to go in those small increments. Well, again, I never want that cell to change. I don't want it to reference the thing below it next, and that's what it will actually end up doing. If I don't,